Here we are, episode 17 of the Two Russells podcast with me, Russell Jervis.
And me, Russell Quirk. When we get to 20, this will be seen as a success, apparently. Although I rather think it is already, don't you?
Well, the feedback from last week's, or the most previous episode, Paul Mumford, has been fantastic. I've had some wonderful comments and lots of people saying how nice you are, Russell, which I do correct them and say, no, they mean me.
It's an act. Every now and again I can put it on and pretend to be a nice person. No, the Paul Mumford thing was great. The man that wrote the biggest mortgage in British residential property history. Who knew, right?
Yeah, incredible stories. Love that. And we've got an incredible lady today who's going to tell us some great stories, I'm sure. So Verona Frankish, CEO of YOPA, welcome to the Two Russells podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And talking of CEOs, why aren't there many of you female CEOs in the property industry?
Oh, we're going straight to it.
Straight out.
Goodness me. Sorry, Verona.
I want to unsettle her, you see, because I want to see Verona Frankish rattled, because no one ever sees this lady rattled. No, a very, very serious question. You've had huge success. You run a fantastic business. We'll get to that later on in terms of, recent news around performance and so on, which obviously I'm sure you'll have lots to say about. But I think it's still sad and lamentable that in 2024, I can count the amount of female CEOs in the property industry on one hand. I think there's less now than there were 2 or 3 years ago. Why?
It's a great question and one I get asked quite a lot, as you can imagine. I'm not happy about that. And whilst I am very happy to use my voice and fly the flag, it's not a badge of honour that I wear comfortably, because I think there should be more for a whole host of reasons. And I think women make fantastic leaders. I guess there's a number of reasons why there isn't enough. I think the first thing is if I flash back to 20, 30 years ago, women were not championed in anywhere near the same way as they are today. And we're still making progress. It's still not enough, but it's better than it was. Women weren't given the confidence in order to go for promotions or to apply for the next job. And there is this fantastic stat that if women looks at a job description, you'll know this better than me, Russell, and they look at all the things they can't do. Yeah. And a man looks at it and says, oh, I can do 30% of that. I'll wing the rest. Women are just not wired that way. And therefore, we've not put ourselves forward for opportunities. And then because of those things, there isn't enough representation. And when there isn't representation, then other people think, well, I can't make it to the top. There appears to be not enough women there. And therefore, why should I put myself out on a limb? And the other thing, whenever women do make it, then we are critiqued so much more than men are. I'm sorry, but that's true. We are judged because we're female. We're criticised because we're female. And therefore, a lot of women think, you know what? I'm not going to put myself above the parapet.
So you don't think there's misogyny in the property industry at board level, at senior industry level? Do you think that exists?
I think it absolutely exists. Absolutely exists. I think there's a lot of veiled misogyny, whether that is prejudice and bias that people don't know they carry and hold. And therefore decisions are made based on what does a CEO look like? What is a CEO? And if you say the word CEO, in your mind, because of all the representation that you've seen around the world, they are 6'2", male and pale, typically. That's what a CEO looks like to most people. So I'm 5'4", white, Irish and female. I do not look what people consider to be a CEO. And I think that's part of the unconscious bias that exists.
What do you think the industry needs to do to make sure that there's a balance? A better and proper balance? Or do you think, it's interesting what you say, because actually when I've asked that question of people in the past, the kind of glass ceiling phrase comes out almost as if women are being held back through no doing of their own. What you're suggesting is, to a very large extent, it's women feeling they can't put their best foot forward because of the environment as such. So you're almost saying that women need to somehow feel more empowered, I guess. And how do you, and obviously look, in your role as chairperson of the Women in Estate Agency organisation, how do you ensure that happens? I know you are doing things, but how do you ensure that happens so that we find a proper balance?
So there's so many things that we have to do. And I'm not saying that it's just women or it's just misogyny, but it's a whole cocktail of different reasons why we are where we are today. Whenever people ask me what we need to do differently, I always start with, it starts at home. And if you are a woman in a role and with ambitions and want to reach your potential, then you have to start with a conversation at home that says, how are we splitting the management of this household? Who's sharing the kids? Who's sharing the chores? What responsibility are you taking as my partner in order to make sure that I can also reach my potential as well as me helping you reach your potential? And if it doesn't start at the home, I know so many men in business, when I talk to them about this, they start to shuffle a little bit. Oh, I don't have a problem in my business. Yeah, exactly. I don't have this problem because in my business, 50% are women. Well, yes, they are, because they're 50% of the population. But when you go up your ladder, and then when you look at your home setup, how does that work? And in lots of cases, women are happy to be that person at home. In lots of cases, they're not, but they don't have a choice. And in the group in particular, and at our conference, I see and speak to so many women who say that because they're involved in Women in a State Agency, their husbands feel challenged. They don't understand it.
So when you say challenged, do you mean undermined?
Well, they feel like because we want to be bigger, then they have to be smaller. And that is not true. We just want to be recognized for what we bring to the table, for what we bring to the world and to life. And if we are, then we can all be happy and fulfilled, but it doesn't have to be one or the other.
So you think there's a large proportion of men, forget the industry, our industry for a second, that almost feel threatened by the prospect of their wife or girlfriend earning more money than they do?
I think there's a lot of that.
Really?
A lot of that.
I'd love it.
Well, my husband loves it. and you know what? Part of this is if you're happy in your own skin, and as with everything, it starts within, right? If you're happy with your own skin and your wife is doing well or your husband is doing well, you want to see them thrive. You want to see them do well. But if you're not happy in your own skin, you feel threatened and insecure, then that causes problems. It causes problems in relationships. And I'll be honest, it caused problems in my parents' relationships. Because my dad felt threatened because my mum was intelligent, articulate, fun, brilliant personality, and he felt undermined by that.
I suspect Russell Jervis wants to go there, doesn't he?
Yes. So just take it back to where it all began for you, Verona. So your journey and what drove you. Obviously, your mother was a huge inspiration, but just talk us through that journey to where you are today.
So I grew up in Derry. I'm an OG Derry girl. I spent the first 24 years of my life. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. And I guess from a very early age, I had a role of responsibility in supporting my mum. I was very much her wing woman as we were growing up.
You were the COO.
Yes, I was the COO of the household.
The CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm very proud of my roots, where I come from. I still call Derry home. I go back there regularly, and I'm very proud of the characteristics of growing up in that place has definitely played a part in who I have become today. My mum was a part-time, she stayed at home, but also worked part-time pretty much most of my life, largely because financially she had to.
And also 8 children.
Well, exactly, and it was a struggle for us. We grew up for a large part of our life in a council home. We had very little material or luxuries, but we had everything that really mattered. We were very close as a family, remain very close today. My granny died at 93 with 49 grandchildren. That's a pretty good Irish Catholic family, right? So, I'm very proud of where I grew up. I then, at 23, I moved to London, partly because I met a guy, of course, that old one. But also I knew that my life was beyond Derry. I knew that there was wider opportunities out there. I've always been quite ambitious. I've always wanted...
What was that spark? What was driving you? What were the bright lights you could see?
Whenever you grow up in a place like Derry, whilst it had all the love and the welcome and it's an amazing place, there isn't many opportunities. There was a lot of people who struggled financially, and it gave me a lot of grit and resilience. It was a political landscape. My parents' relationship wasn't a brilliant relationship, so it was an emotional landscape for me. So whenever I bought my first house at 19, and whenever I tasted that independence and that freedom, I knew that there was more that I wanted out of life. I wanted a better life, I guess, than the environment that I could see if I stayed in Derry.
Stayed in Derry, yeah.
Exactly.
And into London, first role?
First role was Marks and Spencer. No, okay. So I was in retail whenever I lived in Ireland. So the only retailer I wanted to work for at the time was Marks and Spencer. So I moved to London, and my first job was the food hall manager in the Marble Arch store.
Wow.
Which is a pretty great start,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And I went through the leadership training program, management training program, it was called back then. And it was a fantastic grounding in leadership. And I give Marks and Spencer full credit for the basis, the foundations of my leadership skills, for sure. And I spent almost 10 incredibly happy years there. Absolutely loved my time at M&S. I'm a huge brand advocate. It's a fantastic business, and I couldn't be happier to see the resurgence that it's had in the last 5 or 6 years.
Do you still shop there?
I absolutely do. Yeah, I absolutely do. I'm a huge brand fan. Actually, I'll tell you.
Don't we all?
Well, of
Speak
course,
for yourself.
the best men's suits in the country by a country mile. And I'll tell you a little story about that, actually, because it's the brand thing is really important for me, and the product particularly, because when I was leaving M&S, I wanted to have children. I was in my early 30s. I used to leave home at 6 a.m. on a Monday, get home at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. And they took their pound of flesh, but I loved every minute. But I knew it wasn't sustainable when you have kids. Certainly not back in the day. No. And when my boss had left to be the CEO of Barrett Shoes. Remember Barrett Shoes?
Yes, yeah.
So he left to be the CEO of Barrett Shoes. He definitely does not wear Barrett Shoes. And they were based in Leeds. He said, I want to create a job for you in Leeds so you can have kids and you can still have the big job, because I want you to be, we're obviously great friends. And he created a job for me in Leeds. And it was a listed company, actually, but the family owned 51% of the shares. So it was effectively a family-run company. And they knew they had to modernize, needed to change, but they were unwilling and incapable, I think, of doing so. So as a consequence, I had a number of challenges there. The first and foremost was I did not believe in the brand, the product. Okay. When I was at M&S, I wore top to toe M&S all the time.
You're a brand ambassador.
Absolutely huge. So I bought all the shoes, every single pair of shoes that I could buy, and I tried to wear them and advocate for them, and I just couldn't. I didn't.
You couldn't walk in those shoes?
Authentically, I could not walk in the shoes. They were uncomfortable, they didn't really look great, and they were cheap.
So you couldn't believe in the product?
I couldn't believe in the product. And after 9 months, we left together, along with another lady, Annette, who's now a good friend, that we that joined at the same time. So the two reasons were, one, I just couldn't believe in the product, and the second one was culturally, they were completely misaligned with my values. They didn't want to change, and they vetoed pretty much every decision. And it was a very good lesson for me, because I knew I couldn't ever work for a brand that I didn't believe in, and I couldn't work in a culture that that wasn't aligned with my values. So it was a really good lesson for me at the time.
And then from Barrett's into...
From there, I found out I was expecting my first child at the time. So my husband and I decided to set up now ex-husband, by the way, set up a financial services business at the time. So we set up our own business, which I then entered into a completely new sector.
So can I just say, why? So you have M&S Shoes, financial services. Where's the link?
Yeah, so the link was, it was a highly regulated industry. It had a professional persona. And at the time, you will remember, because you guys are about as old as I am, you'll remember that Northern Rock were doing 125% mortgages.
Yes,
so
that worked out well.
Yeah. So, well, it didn't, did it? So the reason we saw a niche in the market, so we set up a business that was... Every time we arranged a mortgage for a customer, we matched them with a personal coach. So the coach would help them to manage and pay off the mortgage earlier using financial management techniques. So I actually built a coaching platform, and I did quite a bit of the coding as well back in the day. Built the platform, very early prop tech, fintech, and we assigned coaches to our customers. So we found a niche in the market that was something a little bit different. That business was then sold to Mortgage Talk, which then merged with MAB. Okay. So I spent ultimately 15 years in financial services, and the last 8 of those at MAB, during which time we floated, and during which time was also the dawn of prop tech and fintech. And I worked directly for Peter Brodnicki, who I know you've had on the pod.
We have,
And, Peter and I are incredibly close friends. I learned so much from him, so much in that period of time. And he enabled me to kind of explore and discover a lot of the prop tech space, and I was involved in helping businesses to develop their mortgage proposition in a new world. At the time, we obviously worked with eMove, we worked with Easy Property, Express Agency, YOPA even at the time, and also PurpleBricks, of course.
Yeah.
So I then spent the first couple of years working alongside PurpleBricks, helping them to crystallize the mortgage opportunity in their world. And then it sort of became an eventuality that I would, an inevitability actually, that I would jump the fence and go into property, because their two things are very inextricably linked.
So fast forward then to CEO of YOPA. How did that come about? Talk us through that.
Okay, so I spent 2 very, very happy years at PurpleBricks, and the last 6 months not so much, because going back to that values and misalignment, the values of the company were at a stage where I wasn't comfortable with where it was going.
This is post Michael and Kenny, obviously.
This is post Michael and Kenny, and this was in the late stages of Vic's tenure, and Helena was a peer on the leadership team, and I think it's fair to say that we weren't best friends. Helena and I, we weren't aligned in our values, and that was a challenge. It was really probably the first time that I'd come across that situation with a female, and I felt really uncomfortable about that, because I was the only female on the leadership team for a long time. She then joined the business, and I was so excited. I helped in the recruitment process. I totally advocated for her, and I was so excited to have another female on the leadership team with me. Unfortunately,
did she have sharp elbows?
She had very sharp elbows. It was very clear that Helena wanted the CEO job at PB. I could not be less interested in the CEO job at PB. And
I'll say this, Verona, because you won't want to, because you're too nice. She was grossly over-promoted, in my opinion.
You're right. I would not possibly say that.
As then, and look, we've all had our, failures and misgivings in the industry, me in particular, but it's very, very clear that she was the wrong person to give that role to, which obviously ended ultimately in her failure and inarguably the failure of the PurpleBricks business.
Yes.
Do you know, I take zero joy in that, and I genuinely mean that.
You didn't smile when you read that she'd been fired?
No, I didn't, because my honest opinion on all of this is there was a huge amount of heart and hard work from a whole host of amazing people that created, which at the time was an incredible brand. What they achieved from zero
to PurpleBricks, we've heard
in
about
a very
time
short
and time
time
again.
was incredible. And I feel proud of being a part of that. I absolutely am. And frankly, I wouldn't be in this job now had I not had that experience. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm very close friends with Michael Bruce, as you probably know. And, we talk about those days a lot. And, we're both sad about the demise of PurpleBricks. And yes, I feel she played a huge part in that. And I'm sad about that. I genuinely am sad about that. And I'm sad for all the people who lost out and who've had difficult times because of that phase of the company.
So I don't think necessarily the demise of PurpleBricks is all her fault. And I'm not actually suggesting that for a second. I think she contributed. Because, as we're going to come on to now, the world of online estate agency, I happen to know, is not always an easy one or indeed a profitable one, Verona. Mm-hmm. It's fair to say that obviously I had my own failure with eMove in 2018, which, by the way, I'm very, very happy to talk about. If people want to make comments on it.
He's desperate to talk about it.
I'm over it.
Watch this space.
I'm over it.
Watch this space.
I'm over it.
I beg to differ.
Yes. You and me both.
So, but the space is very, very difficult. As, look, everybody in the space has found, PurpleBricks included, House Network, 99 Homes, Doorsteps, eMove, and so on. There's really only 2 businesses standing. PurpleBricks / Strike, of course, they merged, being one, although they were famously sold for £1, having lost lots of money. YOPA are the only one that I would genuinely now say can hold their heads up as a success, particularly under your tenure. So you've been CEO now for 2.5 years.
Correct, yeah.
So that I think is admirable. But there is a but here. And that but is, and people may have seen this in the trade press over the last few weeks, still making losses.
Yeah.
And the trade press recently, in fact, there were 2 headlines. It was odd because one was kind of YOPA on path to profit, all good, which I'm sure you want to comment on. And the other, which I think was in the Negotiator, was YOPA continue to make losses. So one quite negative, one quite optimistic and I guess,
Supportive.
sensible and supportive on the basis they could see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably want to elaborate on where you are on the basis that, yes, you're almost one of the last standing online estate agencies. You're kind of proving the concept, maybe proving that there is a space in that subsector for hybrid agents, whatever we want to term those as, but not too many of them. I mean, literally one or two left. But talk to us about the losses. Why is YOPA still not making money?
Okay, so you will know that in the whenever a lot of those businesses were founded 8-9 years ago, there's a lot of investment in that space, and there was a lot of gambling, frankly, from investors to say who's going to be the last one standing, who's going to make it, who's going to scale. And I think at that time, YOPA was definitely riding on the coattails of PurpleBricks, as a number of other businesses like eMove were, and hoping for them to be successful and then us to ride that wave. In the last couple of years, that hasn't been the case because, as we've discussed, PurpleBricks has gone in a different direction. I think in the time that YOPA was going through that journey, we built really great tech. We built a great culture and a pretty decent brand. So whilst it has always been seen as a bridesmaid, I think there was a lot of solid foundations. So I did join the business 2.5 years ago, and thank you for the compliment. But I have to say, I stand on the shoulder of all the people who went before me. A lot of great work was done in the business before I joined. There's no question.
But how do you keep that belief in a business when I think year one was a £7.8 million loss, which is an awful.
Well, actually, it's a lot worse than that. It was.
So what are the cumulative losses?
It was almost 100 million. Yeah. So first year was 30, then it was 17, then it was 8. So it has definitely.
I was in the first year of your.
In my tenure. Sorry, Russell. In my tenure. Yeah. So I joined the business knowing that. Because I could see the potential. I could see the foundations of the business were in good shape. What I believed it lacked was direction and purpose, and everybody aligned towards a common goal. And if I've brought anything, I think that's what I've brought. I engaged with all our people. I'm ultimately a people person. That's what I care about. And I said to the board when they started talking to me about the role, I didn't know the role existed. They approached me. They started talking to me about it. And I said, if you want another CFO leader, which is what they've had previously, I'm not your gal. If you want someone who's going to lead through people and through the culture and getting people aligned and on the bus towards a common goal, I'm your gal. And I was almost like pushing them away at every turn to say, I'm not that, this is who I am. Anyway, when they offered me the job, it meant that I could approach it in the way that I was very clear about how I would approach it.
So did you have to be very, very clear with the board? And obviously we'll talk in a second about how maybe the board and shareholders have changed since your tenure started. Yeah. But did you have to kind of put your foot down and say, I'm doing this job on the basis I do it my way? I'm not going to have daily interference from a board, because obviously it was Savills, presumably still the Barclay family to a degree, and DMG. And look, I know what it's like to have a board where they want to be the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
Did you have to be very, very, very kind of robust with them and say, it's my way or no way?
Do you know, I didn't. And the reason why is because when I went through that process, I was very clear and I did a presentation. This is how I will approach the job. When they hired me, that was my green light to say, do it, not do it the way you've told us. And I have to be, they have been incredible. My board have been absolutely incredible. First of all, Grenville was my chair, and Grenville is a titan in this industry.
Yeah, right? Countrywide. I mean, he's inarguably, along with Harry Hill and Peter Rollings, the greats of the industry.
Yes.
And this is a whole different conversation that we don't really have anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And Grenville, you know, in my early days was a brilliant mentor and supporter. It was my first CEO role, you know, and I was very honest that I didn't come into this as a finished article. I had loads to learn and I was open to learning. So he was a great supporter, but there was zero tail wagging the dog, honestly. And of course, in time, you know, it's a bit like whenever, you know, you're holding the reins of a toddler, and whenever they start to be more confident and they start to thrive, the reins came off. And I genuinely can say I have an incredible relationship with my entire board. You're right, the shareholder structure changed last year, and we now have all of our small shareholders and the Barclay brothers no longer have interest in the business. It is 75%-ish DMG and 25% Savills, both incredibly supportive shareholders and both who have a high degree of confidence in our path, where we're going and how we're going about it.
The path must be accelerated soon, because at some point they'll want back £100 million, I would think.
Absolutely. So would you like me to talk a little bit about how we plan to accelerate that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, let me go back first of all and just kind of go through
I
the profit
worked out my maths
points.
in my mind
Yes,
of how many
absolutely.
years that's going to
Well, I
take.
think for the first thing to say is there is no expectation that at £100 million will be back. There is a write-off of a big chunk of
But
that.
presumably the shareholders that have gone have taken that loss, right?
They've taken a
So
proportion of it.
DMG that have increased their shareholding of late haven't come in at that previous share price. They've come in at a lower share price.
Absolutely. We
So
revalued
they're
the
covered.
business.
So
We
they're
revalued
covered.
the business, exactly.
Yeah. So
And
actually a good bet for DMG.
It is. And also, how can I be held accountable for something that happened 5 years ago when I would maybe not have made those decisions? So just going back to the profit. So over the last 2.5 years, we got everybody on the bus. We're very clear about what our purpose is, and we're very clear about what our goals are. And we all make our decisions based around that. And that is a combination of a number of different levers. So it's keeping your costs under control, taking costs out that are unnecessary, increasing our average fee, increasing our average return per instruction. Then once the foundations of the business are in place, then you scale, then you grow, because it would be foolish to do that before getting the foundations right. So we've done a lot of that over the last couple of years. And in the last few months, we've seen, well, since May, we've seen repeated months of profitability.
Yeah.
So back to your point about losses last year, yes, we did make a loss last year. For the 9-month period, we lost 3.7 million. However, that was on a reducing trajectory and also on our multi-year path to profitability. And our path to profitability suggests we will make profit next year for the first time annually. This year we'll make repeated monthly profits, but it won't be an annual profit.
But the annual, the year picture will be a vastly reduced loss.
Vastly.
Yeah.
Vastly.
So your direction of travel, your path to profit is clear, really.
Very clear. So hence the reason why our shareholders are continuing to be confident and continue to be supportive. Exactly.
Well, there was a great statement from, is it Manuel, your chairman,
Yes.
who commented in, I think it was Estate Agent Today, about basically his undying support. And I think what did he call it? Unequivocal support.
Unequivocal
For you and
support,
the YOPA business.
And, you know,
It's quite unusual, by the way, for a shareholder stroke chairman to kind of really put themselves on the line like that. So I thought that was interesting and, quite impressive.
well, it's reassuring for me, but we also have a really solid relationship, a really great relationship. And, you know, they're seeing the progress in the business, which they haven't seen to this extent before. They're very happy about where we're headed, and I'm very happy with their support. So it's a great relationship.
And as a CEO, your role is to vision and lead. So
Yes.
where are you leading YOPA to next, Verona?
Well, you say, because Verona's mentioned a few times the word progress.
Yes.
In the last few days, there's been an announcement.
Yes.
Are you changing the business, adding to the business? What is this new announcement? And obviously,
Okay.
one of the reasons that we've got you here today.
So it is definitely an addition to the business, but rather than we are changing our model.
So you're not
let's be
pivoting.
crystal clear. We're absolutely not pivoting. So our core YOPA business, as I've mentioned, getting the fundamentals, the foundations right in that business is super important. And we always knew that, you know, to your point earlier, 95% of customers in the UK today still choose a no sale, no fee agent.
Yeah.
That's the predominant choice. And we play in the 5%. Well, we do offer no sale, no fee, but a small proportion of our customers choose it. And if we want to grow and to pay back the support and investment of our shareholders, then we can't continue to play in that 5%. So we want to play in the 95% that most customers are choosing. So we are announcing this week, or we have announced already, that we are adding a new division to the YOPA business, and that's we're basically now going to play in the brokerage space as well.
Okay.
And so what do you mean by
that,
brokerage?
Yes. So
It's quite an American term.
it is. So our core YOPA business, the one that you know and love today, our agents have a franchise area that is limited geographically by their business license agreement. And they have access to our bundle packages, our buy now, pay later packages, and ongoing support of market appraisals being booked into their diary on a daily, weekly basis.
And much of that is fixed fee.
a significant proportion of that is, it's 85% is fixed fee. So that is our core YOPA business, and we will continue to grow that business. By the end of this year, we'll have 200 agents in that business.
I was going to ask how many agents you are now.
We have 185 today. We'll have 200 by the end of the year. So we will continue to grow that business. It's the solid foundation. But we know that the other 95% of customers will choose a no-sale, no-fee agent. So we now are opening up our associate model, and associates will be able to be sponsored by our existing territory operators and territory managers, which helps them to grow their business as sponsors.
And earning off the downline.
Now, the difference will be we will not have a very deep downline. We do not want our agents necessarily to be turning into recruiters or, building a team in an area that they're comfortable with, and for them to drive their revenue in their businesses by sponsoring business, fantastic. But we will not have a very deep downline.
And this will be in the existing territories?
They can do in existing territories, or they can anywhere in the UK.
But to be clear,
there's no geographical
percentage
constraint.
Commission of sale price, no sale, no fee. So what we would call conventional, traditional estate agency as we would know it.
Yes.
Okay.
But on a self-employed basis.
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing in the EXP, the estate agency, the agency,
exactly.
Horton's nested space.
Correct. Yes.
Which seems to be growing. I think EXP are up to 600 agents now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How are you going to be any different? What's your USP?
So I guess a couple of things. One, we've got an existing community of 200 agents today, which will be a fantastic resource and community for agents to tap into. And, as I said, we've been in the self-employed space now for over 8 years. So we've learned a thing or two about what to do and what not to do along the way. We've also got a very flexible model in terms of pricing. So if I would love to see, this is the advocate of women in me, I would love to see women who don't believe in themselves and don't have the time, or they're not as ambitious and want to build big businesses, and men for this as well, who just want to do 3 or 4 instructions a month, 3 or 4 transactions a month. We have a package for them which gives flexibility, but then we've also got a package for agents who want to be very ambitious and grow big teams and grow big revenue. So we've a flexible package. From a commercials perspective, splits. Our splits are up to 80% in favour of the agent, depending on which package you take. So I think we're some of the best in the industry from a package perspective. And the agent will very much be the hero in this brand, by the way. So this will not be YOPA branded.
Is it powered by?
So
it's Jane Smith powered by YOPA.
YOPA Associates, exactly that. Yeah. So the agent or the brand that they choose, by the way, if they want to trade under a particular brand, they can choose a brand as well.
So what do they get? And do they pay a subscription?
Depending on the package they choose. So if you're the more ambitious, you pay a monthly subscription. If you just want to do the ad hoc listing, you just pay on listing rather than having a monthly subscription.
Right. Now, I'm hearing now of transactions taking 18 weeks to go through as a freehold. That's an average 22 weeks as a leasehold.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to join this model, I'm going to have to be prepared for 5 months without money.
And I think that's one of the challenges in the self-employed brokerage models. So it can take,
which is not a challenge with YOPA, because
it isn't. Exactly.
So
one of the options that is available is for our existing territory operators as sponsors to support their associates in the early months. So if that's an arrangement that they can make at a localized basis, YOPA won't be involved in that, but the local agents who sponsor will be able to have the opportunity to do that. And of course, some agents will bring some lettings with them. Some will bring existing pipelines potentially from elsewhere. But, if you're entering the self-employed brokerage space, that is definitely one of the things that you need to consider in the early months and have some investment to do that.
How many are you looking for? How many numbers? Have you got some numbers that...
Ultimately, we want to scale. In the first year, we're aiming to reach 100 in the first year.
Yeah, which would put you firmly at number 2 in that.
Well, do you know what? There's no, unfortunately, there's no dwindling number. There's no specific league table, I don't think. I mean, obviously, EXP have said they've got 600. Yeah. As I understand it, Steph and Andrew at the agency have 100 or so. Okay. I'm not sure on Nested, something between 50 and 100. So I think it's fair to say
50.
IAD, I don't know, to be honest. I think they had ambitions to get to 100. I don't know if they've achieved that.
They hit 50.
So 100 will put you in the top 2 or 3, maybe even second to EXP. Look, Keller, and obviously I'm pretty down on Keller because of my experience, frankly, which I can't talk about because I signed a bit of paper to say I wouldn't, but here I am talking about it. Keller have gone from 500 to 200 agents. They are diminishing for a whole bunch of reasons, which would form the basis of a very interesting separate podcast, I'm sure.
We're here to talk to Verona, not to you, Russell.
I know. I don't think Keller Williams are Verona's competition, really.
How are you juggling all of this? You've got a new model there, you've got the existing model there. We've got Women in Estate Agency, which I know has got some incredible things going on.
Yeah,
We've got a rising pop star at home as well.
We're going to say a family.
Young Max.
A bit of juggling to do.
Do you know, well, first of all, I have an incredibly supportive husband. And I talk about it starts at home, and it definitely does for me. So that definitely helps. My kids are much older now. My youngest is 12, but she's super independent. And my husband is, really, really supportive. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I've always been high energy, high pace, high volume, always. I've never known any different. So I love it. I love what I do. I particularly love helping people reach their potential. And I feel like everything in my life at the minute is doing that. I'm helping YOPA reach its potential. I have a number of mentees, who I also love working with to help them reach their potential, and helping women and advocate for women and represent and use my voice to empower and support women is so important to me. That doesn't feel like hard work at all. That just feels like something I'm compelled to do.
Does that come back to your relationship with your mother?
For absolutely no question. So, I never felt that my mum necessarily had a voice or used her voice or was able to. She was too busy trying to raise 8 children. And because she didn't, I feel like and do you know what? Not just my mum, but women of my mum's ilk. Women who don't have the opportunity or the platform to speak up and talk about how amazing they are. I feel like I should raise other women up. And it's so counterintuitive to me that in my experience, some women have pulled me down.
Yeah.
So it's, for me,
because you feel
always
that
about raising.
The almost the assumption of 30 or 40 years ago, the assumption would be that women with a homemaker meant that they didn't fulfill their complete potential. That's what's driving it.
Absolutely. And do you know what? First, I know lots of women who are really happy raising their children and being at home, and I'm loving that for them. I also, at a very early age, knew it wasn't enough for me. I am such a proud mum of my 3 kids. They are incredible kids, and I'm so proud of what they're turning into be as adults. But they also know, and we talk about this on a regular basis, if I was just at home looking after you, I wouldn't be a good mum. I just wouldn't be. And, equally, they're proud of me.
Because you were going to say you want to be a North Star for your kids as well.
I want to show them what's possible. Yeah. I want my daughters to know that whatever you want to do, you can do it. And I want my son to see that there are women that can be successful and they're not a threat to you.
Yeah.
And, all my kids are, I'm super proud of them and they're proud of me. So as a package, it works.
We've brought the conversation full circle, haven't we?
Yeah. I think you're definitely making a difference, Verona, in seeing so many women that I know in estate agency love the conference. The conference we've spoke about as being probably the best thing we go to.
Yeah, it's a special day.
And we might have plans.
We
can't announce them yet, but we might have plans. We might have plans for that conference.
You mentioned values right at the beginning. What are your core values?
Family, loyalty, and fun. That's the 3 values that I live by on a regular basis. And, within that, because family, I have a huge network of friends, and family and friends to me are all molded together. Making every single day count is a huge value for me, because I lost my brother at 30, Sean. He was 30. And he had epilepsy, and he had a seizure in his sleep. We knew he had epilepsy, but we didn't know that we'd lose him to it. And when he died, I took the mantle as the older sister to live his life for him too. He loved to travel. He loved life. He loved people. He didn't have the level of confidence that I did. So I feel like I have to take that mantle and make sure that I'm living for both of us. So that is a huge driver for me. And doing that alongside people that I care about, whether that's family and friends, and doing it and being super loyal, because I've also had experiences in my life where people have not been loyal to me, and it hurts. So loyalty is huge for me. And then, you know what? I try really hard not to take myself too seriously. A lot of what I do is serious, but I've got to have fun along the way. You know, I love to laugh. I love to spend time with people. And so those are the three values that are very close to my heart.
I love those three values. Don't you, Russell?
I do. I might even have to aspire to one or two of those myself.
I feel we've only scratched the surface, so I think we might have to have a Verona Frankish part 2 see how the associate model's gone.
This has been
happy to come back.
very interesting, inspiring. Your what's that word? That's very hard to say. The indefatigable Verona Frankish.
Oh, I like that.
I think. Yeah. No, you're you don't stop. You're going for it, aren't you? I admire it.
Always. And that's why I say you have to make every day count. You know, we've only got one go at this, and I'm absolutely determined to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. Verona Frankish, thank you very much. So that's the end of the episode 17 of the Two Russells podcast.
Another good one. It's been
a
keep
brilliant
getting
one.
these fantastic guests on the chair here.
Yeah.
More to come. If you're interested, by the way, in coming on, let us know. We do say no to a few people, by the way, I'm afraid, because this isn't just about promotion. This is about, as you can see from the conversation we just had with Verona here, it's about journeys, it's about motivation, inspiration, and so on. We really want to get to know the people in this industry. That's what this is about.
Yeah, and inspiration is the word that sticks with me there. So, Verona, all I've got to say is it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.